Bada bing. This is VikesNow. The 1-4 Vikings we're in a rough position because the team's best player, we think, is going on injured reserve. It was kind of established as a matter of fact by Tom Pelissero. But then I woke up this morning looking for a source to link for the actual IR placement. It's not there yet. So I guess we have to be weirdly patient on getting that formality. But per usual, on Wednesday on this program, I'm here with Josh Frey, who I think was optimistic heading out of the Chiefs game because, you went toe-to-toe with the champs, and then you wake up Tuesday morning to the news of Justin Jefferson being out. We're going to get into that. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right, apart from the Vikings being 1-4 right now.
And the baseball. That's not good for you either.
And the baseball. Yeah, definitely didn't go too great last week for my Brewers. So we're done with that. Now we're on to basketball season. So yeah.
Yeah, you can mail it in on these 1-4 Vikings. The Brewers did themselves in. But thankfully for Josh's sake, he's got Damian Lillard on the way. Well, already in the house. The regular season NBA games are a couple weeks away.
Yep, couple weeks away. So looking forward to that. And maybe by then we'll be looking at a Vikings team that maybe turns things around a little bit, but not feeling too great about that anymore either.
That's where we're at right now. You're going to give us a bird's eye view of all of these transactions, transgressions, vibes through week 5, because I don't really know it makes any sense for us to go through what happened bad in the Chiefs game. It was pretty evident that one fumble by Josh Oliver, which evidently Josh just looked up was his first lost fumble of his career. Go figure. We're past the point of moral victories and critiquing, well, if they can just get this back on track, like it's too late. They're 1-4. And then playing the Bears almost feels like a secondary storyline to where they're at for the long term. So from a bird's eye view, we're going to jump into the loss to the Chiefs, like what it means, Justin Jefferson injury, what that implication is, and so forth. But the first thing I want to ask you, in case we don't get there, now you don't have as much Vikings experience as a lot of the viewers and myself since 1996, but you've got enough to understand the jokes and to understand some of the vibes that we might point out. Is there any fiber of your being that believes that this Jefferson injury will turn out to be a rallying cry where the team has to run the ball more, Hawkinson gets his poop in a group, and they actually start winning games? Or is that the ultimate homer opinion?
I think there is a world where that can happen. I really hope it does happen on Sunday, because this team just needs something positive to happen moving into that 49ers game. Because if they go into Soldier Field and they lose to the Chicago Bears, who have, outside of 3 halves of the past 2 games, have looked like absolute crap for most of the season, especially on the defensive side of the ball, I just need something positive to happen for this team going into that 49ers game. Because if it doesn't, then we're probably looking at a situation where they're going to start blowing some of this thing up, whether it's trading Danielle Hunter, trading Kirk Cousins, Ezra Cleveland, KJ Osborne could even be on that list too with their expiring contracts. So it definitely could happen, and I'm curious to see. This is the one silver lining from this, is we finally get to see what Jordan Addison can look like in an NFL offense where he is the established guy. And hopefully on Sunday he can put a few things together too, because Carolina didn't catch any passes. He looked pretty decent against Kansas City too, with another touchdown catch to his name. But yeah, that's the one thing right now, is hopefully Jordan Addison can turn this into, hey, I can lead this offense.
And he was drafted in a spot where he has the backbone to do that. At Pittsburgh, he was a workhorse, USC to an extent for the season there. So yes, I firmly agree with you that without him, if they would have got Deonte Banks, like you and I kind of suggested, that would be fine. But now with Jefferson out, you'd have the Osborne, Brandon Powell show at wide receiver, which would be like, oh boy. But another thing that's interesting I want to point out for you and the viewers is, like, what if this team was 4-1 and lost Jefferson?
Yes, that would have been even worse.
Oh man,
that would have been terrible.
Yeah, when you're at 1-4 and that happens, you have of course. You just basically have that resigned to your fate, cynical way, like, well, it can't get any worse, so why not throw him on IR? But we're going to jump into the KC stuff here in a second. You can tell me what that loss taught you. But I also want to point out that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah for 21 months has preached this competitive rebuild, which I firmly on board with it. And I understand that that's usually how Super Bowl winning franchises do it, is they rebuild on the fly. We always forget that the Chiefs the year before they drafted Mahomes, were like a front runner to win the Super Bowl. I
Yeah.
remember tweeting or actually posting on Facebook, like, God, this Chiefs team with Alex Smith is probably the team to beat. That ultimately didn't come true, and they got Mahomes to put him over the top and get really dynastic. But right now, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah really has like the both of the words competitive and rebuild are staring him in the face because he can choose either adjective right now, and fans won't be upset if they lose Chicago or even if they win to Chicago and get shellacked by the 49ers. I don't think even Kirk Cousins fans would be like, oh, I can't believe they traded him. I think it would be he has a rubber stamp to lean into whichever one that he wants, which is rally the troops and hope for a 9-8, 10-7 season after some miracles. Or if he wants to have the fire sale, I really think he had like the puzzle pieces are waiting to be snapped in. I don't think that anybody would be like, why'd they trade Neil Hunter? They actually traded Cousins to Patriots. Why would they do that? I think right now it's like a flashing billboard that says, whichever path you choose, you're not going to take any heat for it because both make sense. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so. I really think that I really like the idea of the competitive rebuild too. I really think it's a lot harder to just tear everything down from the beginning and try to rebuild back up, especially because at the end of the day, if the Vikings were to tear everything down, they're really just looking to find the same quality type of players as a Danielle Hunter, as an Ezra Cleveland, as a KJ Osborne. They probably could get hopefully a little bit better at the quarterback position than Kirk Cousins, but at the end of the day, that's probably the baseline of what you're looking for too, with a little bit mobility to him. But yeah, I really don't think that there's any reason to be upset about whichever direction this team takes. If they keep it going and try to at least compete for a wild card spot. I mean, at the end of the day, the NFC is probably going to have at least 9-8 team sneak into that wild card spot. When you look at the divisions like the NFC South, even the NFC West, where LA seems like they're making a little bit of a run, but it really could go either way. And there's probably going to be one team that sneaks in there with a 9-8 record. The Vikings could probably they can still get there, especially if Jefferson is just out for 4 games. And if he comes back and he's the same type of dude that we've seen for the first 5 weeks of the season, and they kind of get things together, they don't fumble the ball as dang much. They probably could make a little bit of a run for it, but I'm kind of at the point where I'm leaning towards just starting to tear things down because I don't know how certain I am that they can actually get to that point of a 9-8 team after starting out 1-4. You still got the 49ers on the horizon. You got a game at Lambeau in a couple weeks. So yeah, I'm starting to lean towards tearing things down, but we'll see how it goes over the next couple of weeks. Maybe they surprise me.
They're actually, I will look you in the face and tell you that if they fix that first quarter fumble problem and the turnover problem in general, so that they start turning it over like a good football team does, they're going to win football games. I don't care if Jefferson's out or not. Kirk Cousins has made a career of doing this in Washington for 3 seasons as a starter. His weaponry there is a lot similar to how it is right now without Jefferson, where you have pretty decent players. We don't know if Addison's going to be an absolute superstar or just a really good wide receiver. Cousins has done this before, so he's not going to mope around and be like, what am I going to do without Justin Jefferson? He gets it. And on your thought about upgrading at quarterback, what I always say is we want a quarterback after Cousins to have the exact same production, but his name isn't Kirk Cousins, and you get him for cheap for 5 years. Because I swear to God, if Jaron Hall in 2025 has 4,200 yards and 31 touchdowns, we will do cartwheels.
Yeah.
And when Cousin does it, we roll our eyes and we're like, oh God. But it's bizarre, but that's the way it works. All right. You wanted to talk about the bird's eye view. We've got a little bit of that out of the way. But after the Chiefs, what was the bird's eye takeaway for you? And then right after that, we'll hop into Justin Jefferson, just in case you want to connect these thoughts.
Bird's eye view for this team is I still believe that they're a pretty dang good football team.
Well, all the metrics say it too.
Yeah, exactly. They're second on the offensive line according to PFF. ESPN win rate has them right up there too for both pass protection and run blocking. The run defense is all of a sudden a top 5 group in terms of yards per carry allowed. Like everything that we've wanted to be improved for so many years from this team is finally good. And now they just can't hold on to the football. It doesn't make it. It's of course it's a classic Minnesota Vikings scenario where as soon as you fix one thing, then another thing is going to go to shit, and you gotta fix that now too. And that's kind of what's led them to the 1-4 record. And again, I still have a glimmer of hope that they can compete in this NFC, especially with the schedule getting a little bit easier down the stretch. You've still got all your division games ahead of you. A lot of things can change over the next, what is it now, 13 weeks over the course of the remaining of the season. But they have to fix the turnover problems. They're not going to win. They're not going, like you said, they can win football games if they fix them. But if they don't, then that's going to be the death sentence for them.
If the Chiefs or the 49ers or whoever your favorite good team is led the NFL in turnovers, they would not have a fancy 5-0 or 4-1 record. They would have something like 1-4 and 2-3. And that is not like, well, maybe they would overcome. No, they wouldn't. You cannot turn the ball over, especially in the first quarter of every game. That's not an exaggeration. Yeah. First quarter of every game this year, they've had some sort of fumble from, pick the flavor of the week, or a Cousins interception, or a Cousins fumble when he was ransacked against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so I would much rather right now at 1-4, a really great draft for quarterbacks coming up, all the excuses in the world to rebuild. I would much rather have the team just suck and be like, all right, like the 2011 Vikings or 2013 Vikings, where I knew what I was going to sit down and watch. But right now, on Sunday, I will not be surprised one iota if they come out and win 31-3 or something. If they stop the fumbles, Madison has 140 yards rushing, Addison explodes for 2 or 3 touchdowns, I'll be doing that Leonardo DiCaprio meme from Once Upon a Time in the West, pointing at the TV, going, this is what they do. You should have seen it coming. On the other hand, they could look like utter buffoons because in retrospect, after that game, if they do that, I'll be like, well, yeah, this was at Soldier Field. They don't win games there that often. And so you just don't know what to expect. And I think that's because of the unpredictability of the turnover thing. That's the only thing I keep settling on as to what prevents them from being good. Now, we've talked already ad nauseum about Justin Jefferson. We think going on the shelf. If Tom Pelissero tweeted it, it's probably pretty rock solid that that's happening. And it'll be at least 4 games, which brings him back right after the trade deadline. I think he'd be eligible to come back after the Falcons game. The bird's eye stuff. You got to tell me, would you think that this is a segue to him missing the rest of the season? Is he really disgruntled about his contract? Or is this the bird's eye stuff for the Vikings going to be a 4-game pit stop? They'll rally around him. What do you got?
I don't think him missing extra time really does much for his contract, because we saw Danielle Hunter miss an entire season and it completely plummeted his contract value. And we've seen the past couple off seasons of him being a little bit upset about his contract, and he finally got a big one this training camp after he conducted that short hold in. But if Justin Jefferson were to be disgruntled about his contract, I don't think that missing extra time is going to be the thing that fixes that for him, in my opinion. I honestly, I would be a little bit surprised if he was back after those 4 weeks, just because hamstrings can be a little bit tricky. We've seen them in the past. They kind of flare back up again if you rush a guy back too fast. And unless the Vikings go on like a 4-game winning streak or something, and all of a sudden they're back in the division by the time week 9 rolls around or week 10 rolls around, I don't think that they're going to rush him back just to preventing any sort of long-term injury problems moving forward. Because if it does flare up again, then that could actually be the thing that prevents them from trying to offer him a big contract this offseason. Because if that comes back up again, then we got the question of is he still going to be that same guy? Is he just 80% of what he was moving into the season? So yeah, I don't think that they're going to rush him back by any means, but I also don't think that him missing any time is going to be because he's upset about the contract.
Yeah, there's a lot of like those aggregator social media, I guess, companies or accounts that love to like show Jefferson upset on the sidelines, like after he wasn't in for the final play. And then they like to insinuate that, well, maybe they won't rush him back because he's going to be upset about his contract. Like, I think if you were going to upset him, I think the way that he would be upset is if he wanted to go after the 4-game absence and the Vikings said no. I think that would piss him off more so than, well, I'm not playing because I don't have a new contract. From the moment he became a superstar, He's been the antithesis of a wide receiver diva. He once said he wasn't fond of money.
Yep.
He's never hinted all off season, like 10 months or 9 months of it since January. He's never once said like, yeah, screw these guys. I don't know what I'm going to do next. He's always just kind of said when it happens, it'll happen. And he's the ultimate competitor. I think the Vikings would piss him off more if he was raring to go on November 6th and Kwesi and Kevin were like, we just can't risk it, man. That might piss him off more because he wants to play. That's the irony of it.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we have to remember that these are some of the most competitive people on planet Earth. And if they want to be on the field, then the team's going to have to let them be on the field at some point. And I think, yeah, I agree with you completely. If there's a way to piss him off, it's shelving him for longer than he needs to be.
That's where I'm at too. We might have this guy in our crosshairs as a talker before too long with Kyler Murray. Like they're at a really weird spot with him because they're kind of good, but they're not really good. They have the Texans. No, yeah, they have the Texans draft pick in their own. They probably will end up getting their own quarterback with the new regime, but you don't know that for sure. So do you play Kyler Murray? If you play him and he sucks, it's going to drive down his draft capital. If you don't play him, general managers aren't going to want to trade a whole like 3 first-rounders for him. I digress, but he could be in the Vikings rumor mill before you know it. So, all right, Kansas City in the rear view, a 27-20 loss. Jefferson's on the shelf. Aside from anything you've already told us, what is your current bird's eye synopsis for these next 12 weeks or beyond when we get to the offseason?
I really just I want the Vikings to start tearing things down. We've got a lot of expiring contracts on this roster right now. I think we came into the year with like 20 something. So I think at least it's time to start, especially if you lose on Sunday. I think it's time to start exploring what you can get for some of these expiring. I think Atlanta would be a team that's interested in Kirk Cousins with just everything going on there with the Desmond Ridder. I think they've got a really strong offense right now, but their quarterback position just simply hasn't been that great. And if they were able to acquire a guy like Cousins, I think they can run away with that NFC South. With Tampa Bay not looking the greatest especially on offense. New Orleans is I don't even want to go there. They're a bit of a mess too. They had a really nice victory last week, but outside of that, they've yet to break 20 points in a single game. So I think that if Atlanta were able to get a steady producer like Kirk Cousins at that quarterback spot, I think they'd be able to win that division and probably make a little bit of noise in the playoffs with some of the playmakers that they've got. So yeah. I want to wait a little bit. I want to wait until after week 5 happens to see exactly how good they can be against the Bears, which are supposed to be a team that's at the bottom of the NFC right now. So if they lose that game, then I think that's time to start tearing things down. If they win it, then maybe you go into that 49ers game, wait a little bit and see what happens. But I really do think that it's time to start exploring some of these trades.
Cousins, in theory, to his next team via trade, if that happens in the next 3 weeks. Whether that's the Patriots, Jets, Falcons, Steelers, Titans, those are all the ones that are kind of whispered, some of them louder than a whisper. He's only going to cost between like 5 or 7 and $9 million. I guess that team, if it's the Falcons, you'd have 2 or 3 months to bridge a relationship for the future if you wanted Cousins to retire there. With that said, whether it won't happen this week, but if it's in the next 3 weeks, what would the Vikings get for him?
I think we're probably looking at a couple day 2 picks. I don't think anybody's going to trade a first rounder. But especially if you look at a team like the Falcons, they're going to have a couple picks coming in next spring with that Calvin Ridley trade that they pulled off. So I think that they'd be a little bit more willing to part with a couple extra picks to get a quarterback that can help them compete right away. But yeah, I think that's what we're looking at right now, a couple day 2s.
Okay. So no general manager or in Patriots case coach, you don't think any of them would throw a first rounder? I guess outside of maybe Brock Purdy getting hurt this weekend, you don't think anybody would throw a first rounder for Kirk?
I think it could happen, but it would have to come with the guarantee that he's going to sign an extension there.
Okay.
Because I don't think anybody for just half a season is going to give away a first round pick for a quarterback that can help him win this year, but then he's going to be gone in 5 months or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it would have to come with that caveat.
Okay. I think after they lost to the Chargers, I think you settled in about a 6-11 team. Was that your feeling?
Yeah, something like that. I
Yeah.
said 4-8 by the time the bye rolls around, so
Yeah.
it'd probably end up being somewhere around there.
And then after beating the Panthers in a pretty cool game, losing to the champs, losing Justin Jefferson in general for a month, or is that where you're still at 6-11 or so?
Yeah, I think they're going. Like you said, if they cut out some of these turnovers, I think they have all the talent to pull off a couple extra wins, whether it be this weekend or even against the Packers in a few weeks. And the divisional games are always going to be competitive, no matter who you throw on the field. So I think they have all the talent to pull off a couple extra wins, but playoff hopes are just about out the window for me.
Fair enough. And then one final thing. Well, two final things. A, will they beat the Bears? And after that, in your estimation, no matter what happens against the Bears, will Kirk Cousins and or Danielle Hunter be traded?
I honestly think the Bears are going to win this weekend.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got the Bears right now 27-21.
Okay.
I think their offense is starting to put some things together, and they're going to have the whole Dick Butkus honoring it before the game or at halftime, whatever they do it. But that building is going to be absolutely on fire with all the honoring going on and all the energy. And they're going to try to go get one for Butkus. And then I do think that I think that they're both going to get traded.
Wow. Okay. So not even like I can see it happening. You think it will happen?
I think it's going to happen. I think the writing's kind of on the wall, and especially with Jefferson probably going to IR, there's really I don't see much of a reason for them to do too much winning, unless I kind of have to get through this weekend in order to truly pick one side or the other. But I kind of see them losing this weekend and then starting to blow things up.
Okay. And with the Cousins trade declaration, where is it?
I think it's Atlanta, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's where I'd lean right now. I don't think New York is a weird one because they have their first rounder, but that other pick that they're going to get from the Aaron Rodgers trade isn't going to transfer until after the season ends. So they're not going to be able to trade that in the middle of the season. And if they don't trade a first rounder, they're probably not going to give Kirk Cousins an extension. So they don't really have much incentive to trade that first rounder. Then the best you're going to get is either a third rounder next spring or a 2025 pick. And I don't really see that happening. New England, I think Bill Belichick's just stubborn and he's going to stick with his guy, Mac Jones, until everything comes crashing down. So both of those spots seem a little bit iffy to me. It doesn't make a ton of sense on my end. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm picking Atlanta.
Okay, yeah, and that almost has to be Atlanta by default, assuming they're interested in general. Because if you think Belichick is too stubborn or old to switch it midstream, and then the Jet, I haven't understood the Jets thing from the beginning because they already spent the farm on an old quarterback. Look what that got you. It's like the fool me once thing. And then if you sign Cousins, he does great. Some people are going to want him to stay. You never know if Rodgers is going to come back and look good or if he's going to look like an old man. And so I never understood the Jets connection, especially after they told me Zach Wilson's going to be mentored and he's going to look great. And then he looked great for a little bit and now he is great. I never quite understood that one. So it seems like it'd have to be the Falcons somewhat disillusioned with Desmond Ridder, not even wanting to look at Taylor Heineke, and assuming that Kirk can guide them to a division title, which I guess would be a big deal for them because it's been a while.
It's been a while. Yeah.
Yep. All right, man. Who knows what lies ahead of us for next Wednesday? That's how fast things are moving. This is really a foundational pivot point for the Vikings. Of course, when they hired Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell, that was a major shift. But I would argue, since we didn't know how good Justin Jefferson would be during the 2020 NFL draft, this is probably the most significant moment in Vikings history since they got Cousins in free agency since 2018. If you just kind of gloss over the obvious fact that they fired Spielman and Zimmer to get Kwesi and Kevin. All right, that's my final soliloquy. We'll talk to you in 1 week. All right, man?
Sounds good, man. See you then.
All right, take it easy. Later.